So, the show starts in 3, 2, 1.
It's
Guys,
your boy,
my boy today,
Pickle Rick,
Ramadan,
sir.
Othman, also
Yes.
known as Ozzy.
Yes.
Today
AKA.
on the show, Drippy Faucet Media,
I'm excited to be
with
here.
your host Jesus Flores, also
AKA
known
Chewy,
or
AKA J Flow.
there you go, there you go,
That's
there you
my
go.
guy.
Can you start off just simply by telling
can.
us, like, where are you from?
I'm from planet Earth. A lot of people don't believe that based on the facial hair, but no, I am from this planet. I was born in Tripoli, Lebanon, in 1983, where the players play and they ride on them things like every day. And I came to America when I was 5, almost 6, and I've been in California most of the time thereafter.
Okay, what town did you start living in California?
Like a lot of immigrants, you go and you live with family at first,
Okay.
and I think my aunt had a place in Hollywood or somewhere like that, and then my uncle had a place in San Gabriel. So we lived with my aunt for a few months, my mom says, and then we ended up moving into like a studio apartment that my uncle had in his building in San Gabriel, and then I grew up in San Gabriel.
How was that transition? So what age were you when you first arrived to
5.
America?
Yeah. I remember 2 things that really stick out to me. One, I had to go, we lived in apartment buildings in Lebanon. You know, everything, a lot of developing nations, they don't have your own house and yard.
With
and stuff like
yards
that.
and all these different things.
You have big buildings, and that way you can occupy a lot of people. And
similar to the projects?
It's
At
more
least,
upwards.
At least the projects, not from
In
LA.
the
New York.
Right, or Chicago, or Baltimore, where it's cold. But Lebanon's not cold. That's just the way we built.
Okay.
So I remember 2 things from that in particular, because first of all, I don't trust memory to begin with. It's a lot of narration that you create to be like, oh, I wonder if that's what it was, and then after a while, it just becomes what you believe.
Right.
So, and then emotions infuse memories, and so it alters them.
As best as you can recall.
I remember my mom saying, go back upstairs and say goodbye to all the neighbors. And so then I went back upstairs by myself, and the neighbors are standing outside the door and they're crying because it's a very tight community, yeah. So then when I'm leaving, I had a big bag of candy. 5 years old.
What is Lebanese candy like?
It was like crappy candy. It's like the stuff that you untie this way and red, it's like hard shell candy that wasn't that flavorful.
I don't know if I'm familiar with like really bad candy because I'm used to living pretty much in the United States my entire life.
Yeah, candy's better here.
We have the best stuff, I guess.
Oh. So I just remember like a big bag of it, and then I looked out the window, and on the balcony were like all my aunts and cousins and family members and friends, and there was just a slew of them. And I think, now I don't know if I thought this then, but when I think about it now and I see that picture in my mind and I go, how did that balcony not collapse? Like that was a hella group of people out there. Right. And then we drove to the airport, and I had a little yellow skateboard.
Really?
And my mom let me, and the airlines let me, ride that skateboard up and down the aisles the entire time. I would just ride down, fall into somebody, get up, go back, drink some water, go pee, and then go back down, skate back and forth. Nobody said a word to me. That's bad parenting on my mom's part, and that's bad airlining on the airline's part.
Right, so was it excused because you were a little kid, or?
I think people were lax back then. People smoked on the planes.
Really?
Yeah. The bathrooms were bigger. Okay. And that created an easier access to certain extracurricular activities.
Like some Harold and Kumar,
yeah,
Guantanamo Bay type stuff?
Yeah, some crazy stuff like that. But now everything's I just flew this past weekend. Flying sucks now.
Where'd you go?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. How was it? How was that experience?
It was really great.
Was that your first time out there?
No, I'd been there a couple times.
Okay. How was this time different than previous times?
This time I got really sick. And I stayed in the bed for a long time.
Oh, that sucks.
Food poisoning.
You know what? I've traveled before in the past to Mexico, and like I've had a couple meals, and like after the third one, like I kind of get diarrhea. So it's like it's definitely total. It's like the worst. Okay, so you arrived, you were in Hollywood, you moved around a little bit, you ended up in the San Gabriel Valley.
Right.
In the San Gabriel Valley, I imagine you spent most of your teenage years.
Yeah.
Which was your favorite restaurant there? And why?
Olive Garden.
Olive Garden.
My mom and I used to get dressed up to go to the Olive Garden. We thought that was the height of class. I remember one time we got our picture taken. I wore a little suit. My mom wore her green dress with a little doily thing around it. We walked in, she wore her fake pearls, and we just thought like, man, we're making it. Because my mom was a nanny and a maid, and she like, you know, made that immigrant struggle.
Right.
So the fancy things in life, we didn't know what those were. What we did know was Olive Garden gave us a big plate of food, and I can get the tour of Italy. So, and it was rare that we could go there, but when we did, put on the nice shoes, and I was ready to go.
Would you say that was like that reward in your youthful mind of like, now I'm working very hard, I'm supporting my mom? Because I imagine that you would help her at times as she would go to homes and clean.
Oh, okay. So
she might carry you with her at times?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm the only child. My father died when I was 2. So it was my mom and I. She never really remarried. She didn't date anybody. She didn't want to bring somebody else into the world that was going to, in her world, our world, that was going to make me feel some kind of way. So she made a huge sacrifices to make sure that I was her number one priority, and I felt the responsibility of that. You know, like that was a major thing to me, that my mom was giving up a lot of her life in order to make sure that I had everything that I would have wanted and needed. So when I remember there's many times when she'd go to clean, you know, an apartment. She told me this. She's not gonna like hearing this. She'd make $30, and it'd take her all day on a Saturday after working Monday through Friday to clean this apartment. But she made $270 a week.
Okay.
And rent was like $500 or $400, something like that.
Okay.
So we still have to eat, still have to get gas, still have to make sure if someone of us gets sick. It was only the 2 of us. This was me growing up. And then when I was 13, 14, I could start working. And I started working then, and I always gave my paychecks to my mom. Like just
straight up.
The whole up.
Because you knew that you could never pay back everything that she's done.
She did a really good job of communicating to me when I was young. She said, Osman, we're here in this new country. We don't speak the language. The world is already against us. I can't have you be against me too. I need you to have my back. I need you to be my teammate. So whenever I contributed to the team, the family, the dynamic that we had, it made me feel like I was doing my responsibility. But when I would talk about it with my American friends, they'd be like, you give your mom money? That's your money. You earned that money. And I was like, bro, I wouldn't even have that. Yeah, it's like, you're thinking of it from the fact that you have 6 kids and you have all do your own thing. But me and my mom, we're like this. So I whatever I could do was never enough in my mind, but it was the least I could do. And that was my way of saying, I see what you're doing, and I got your back. I'm going to get skin in the game too.
Right. Which also, well, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, I just want to say that, why do you think that women have this thing where when they have children, they just give their everything for them? And I don't want to generalize.
That's interesting.
I don't want to generalize either, because I know that there's some women out there that just have kids and drop them. Sure. But for the most part, I can totally relate to you, because the sacrifices that my mom has done in her own personal life. Mom, I love you. I know that you dealt a lot, especially with my father, to give me a better life, my little sister a better life. And it's just like, why did you sacrifice your entire being to give me a better life? And I just don't know where that selfless love comes from.
Yeah. I mean, we know there's one major difference between men and women.
Which is?
They can carry a child.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to say that biology determines everything. But we have a phenomenon of men leaving their kids behind or not bleeding for them. And women from the outset, they bleed for their children. They risk their life by giving birth. And I read this book recently called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. And the idea is, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive, but when affluent nations, actually when a nation becomes affluent, what's interesting that comes with it is a feeling of isolation, of alienation, of loneliness, and depression. During times of war, mental health actually improves. So what does that suggest? It's counterintuitive. That's the face that you're supposed to make.
Yeah.
The idea is the same way that, if I can make a parallel argument, the same way if you have a house with 4 kids and 6 bedrooms, and in each one of those bedrooms, the kids have their own video games, their own television, their own phones, etc., etc.
Okay.
The connection of that family is going to be more disparate and disconnected than a family where there's one room and everybody has a share, and you're always kind of entangling with each other. But you get close. And through that closeness, you feel a sense of connection and belonging And human beings are social animals at our outset. If you leave a baby alone, you still feed it and all these sort of things, but you don't hug it, you don't love it, you don't coo to it, they can die sometimes.
For sure.
Which is a crazy thing. Right. You have all the sustenance that you need, but you might still die because you're not getting love, that social component of it.
Right. That's
what we are at our basis in a lot of ways. So, now we're thinking about it from the point of view of if my wife and I do have a kid, we used to want to have like a second story and build out and have our luxury, whatever dreams. But then we're like, but what do we really want? We want a close tie connection, right? We want to have movie nights. We want to have the kid just, like be our buddy in that way so that you can have. Right. So then we're like, well, what if we build our dream house, we won't have our dream family potentially.
So you gotta make a trade-off, but I think it's a clear decision. Either bond like spiritually, emotionally, like intellectually, or just kind of have like this material item that will wither away with time. Right. And although love too can wither away, I think that you can nurture both in different ways. True. And at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, our connection is worth much more than, like, for example, if someone came and said, hey, I'll give you $100 if you say screw Ramadan for the rest of your life. There's no way I would do that, because our relationship means a lot more to me than any monetary value.
What about $150?
200.
200, that's what it is. All right, now you guys know if you want him to, all right, disconnect from me, $200 is all it takes.
All right, so you went to high school, obviously. I know that you played some ball and like we connected in that way, and we shared a lot of like interesting moments. Were you a good student? Like, were you like an A student, a B student, a C student? What type of student were you in high school? Like, for example, what type of kid were you in the classroom?
Yeah, I was a kid who was going to be respectful because, Arab culture that I was raised with was always like, no, an adult has the right to tell you whatever. Okay. Oh, it's a stranger though. It doesn't matter. That's an adult. You shut your mouth and you say yes, sir. You say
regardless. It didn't matter whether they were black, white, Asian.
I mean, there's a lot of racism in the Middle East, and I've experienced that too. But like, the idea is if it's an adult telling the child to do something, the child must obey. Like there's a lot more of a hierarchy of.
Where does that belief come from? If there's a
it's a good question. So I don't know, but I suspect that Islam, we're gonna get into some touchy stuff, has a punitive God.
Okay.
Right? So a punitive God where God is named as being merciful, right? Merciful means you're depending on that. Okay. So my thinking is that hierarchy starts with God down to, and then God has certain lessons in the Quran that says you must obey your parents, you must obey it, things like that. Okay. So I think that's sort of permeated the culture.
Okay, fair enough.
But I also believe that a lot of times the culture creates its gods. Right? So like, what kind of God do you believe in this century? Well, a God that kind of makes sense for that century.
Right, so you're making the assertion that it's not necessarily like a God-sent prophet with this idea. It's more so like you and I, we're living together for so long, and we need to live by a certain set of rules.
That's a real good way to say it.
That's going to allow us to navigate society in a peaceful manner, perhaps in a, not necessarily peaceful, because we know that there's a lot of issues within like religion, but it allows us to navigate society in a way where we might be able to survive it in a relatively healthy manner.
Yeah, you're actually touching on something that was really interesting to me, because I was recently listening to a podcast on that very subject of religion and what kind of religions do people create during different time eras. Right. And it was suggested that around the time that Islam got popular in the Middle East, there was a lot of trading. Okay. Now, when you're trading with strangers, how do you know he's not ripping you off? Oh, I know how. He prays to the same God as I do. And that God that we both pray to is a punitive God. He will punish you if you do the wrong thing, if you lie, if you cheat, if you steal, if you corrupt something. Right. So if I know that you're Muslim and I know that I'm Muslim, then this deal can go through. Because we don't have
without cheating each other.
Exactly, because we don't have a set of laws, we don't have a bureaucracy, we don't have a system of government that I could go to in case this person ripped me off. I can't go to the Better Business Bureau, right? But I know that, hey, you're gonna go to hell if you don't do the right thing.
If you lie to me.
Yeah. So I can imagine that created a sort of structure that allowed for that religion to prosper. And for trade to prosper. And so they kind of created the God that they needed in order to do the business and live the life that you were talking about navigating.
That's
now,
very
we weren't there, I don't know, but I like that theory a lot. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. I could also imagine like a lot of people that were cheating the system.
Oh, yeah.
That were definitely not living by the laws and were just screwing the hell out of people.
Right.
I imagine that was definitely a thing going on. So, okay, you went to high school,
I did.
you graduated, you got into college, obviously.
JC. I barely got into college.
Wait. So you didn't go straight from high school to Cal State Long Beach?
No, I went to Pasadena City College. So this is a part of like the unearned privileges of certain zip codes, right? This is what I think is heartbreaking, because we live in a country that is the richest country in the history of the world. And yet your zip code determines how long you live, how healthy you live, how much education you get, obesity rates can be determined by zip code, which tells us there are certain pockets that confer unearned privileges to some groups and confer unnecessary disadvantages on another group. So the Pasadena City College, the JC that I went to, is one of the 2 best JCs in California. And California is known for having a great JC system. Okay. So because I went to Pasadena City College,
top tier.
Yeah, but think about how fortunate it is. I wasn't a good enough student to go straight into a university because I missed a couple classes. I dropped out of an art class because there was a kid in that class who wanted to be mine. When I was a sophomore, I hooked up with his girlfriend, who used to be my girlfriend, and when he was a senior, and he was intimidating. One of his buddies had ice picked a dude, and I was just like terrified.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so I dropped that class because he asked me to write him a letter of apology, and I was ready to write that letter of apology, but my mom was like, no, you go get your ass beat like you're supposed to. And I was like, Mom, I'm 5'9", 140. This dude is 6'2", 220 pounds.
Let me run.
And he does drugs, and he's scary, and he's like, these guys were partying.
He's
gonna
decapitate you.
Yeah, and he wouldn't think twice about it.
Right.
And I'm a long-term thinker, so I was just like, nah, I'm dropping that class. I'm ready to write the letter, but my mom didn't let me write the letter, so I didn't write the letter. But luckily, Matt Noel, thank you, bruh. You saved my life. That's one of my friends.
The kid that defended you?
Yeah, he put in a good word for me with that dude, who might not have been that bad of a guy, but you're a high school kid and you feel like, oh, somebody hooked up with my girlfriend. Right. I have to show maximum masculinity.
For sure, especially in a society that thrives upon that, especially our young men.
Yeah, because your prefrontal cortex is not developed yet. That's why you gotta trust an adult.
Honestly, you want to let your prefrontal cortex develop 25. As much as possible.
25.
After 25, you're free to experiment as much as you like.
Yeah, you're
I strongly live by that, and I believe in that.
Yeah.
So you went to Pasadena, and
I got a great education there.
Beautiful. What did you learn? What did you learn at Pasadena?
I learned how to be a student.
You learn how to be a student, which is playing the game.
But not playing the game. It's actually earnestly trying to understand what's before you and thinking about it in a deep way and being curious and not worrying about the grade so much as worrying about like, all right, I'm afforded this opportunity to explore an idea based on experts who can teach it to me.
Okay.
And they can point me in the right direction. So my thinking is, I know I'm gonna die.
Okay.
And before I die, I wanna make sure I live.
Beautiful.
So part of the way you live is you think the unexamined life is not worth living. If you are just an automaton, a robot who just gets up, takes a shit, brushes your teeth, eats your food, goes to work, comes home and goes to sleep, like, bro, what kind of life is that? That's like what machines do. That's what my dog does, and my dog does it better than me because my dog doesn't know that there's anything beyond that, so it's super happy in its limited scope.
Absolutely.
But for me, I want to understand things deeper. I don't want to live in my own comfortable ignorance. So when somebody was like, no, okay, let's explore the idea of men and masculinities. I took a class on men and masculinities. Okay. And me being the only boy raised in a patriotic society in America, on top of compounded by the patriotic society that I came from in the Middle East, which is
patriarchal.
I'm sorry, I said. Can we cut that?
It's patriarchal. We'll fix it.
Yeah.
So you lived in a patriarchal society.
And then I'm also coming from a patriarchal society. So now I want to explore, well, what does it mean to be a man? And why do I do the things I did? So that class gave me a lot of language to explain my experiences. And then, that kind of like, oh, now I want to do this. And then I'd go to the tutoring center and they say, okay, your writing is okay, but you need to work on this, this, and this, that. And then once I saw some improvement, the same way if you go to a gym, you do some push-ups and now you see your titties are higher and your abs are cut up and you're just like, oh, I want to do more of this. Right. Well, the same thing for me.
Same thing happened to you with writing and reading. So what was the moment that like ignited?
I'm so glad you asked.
That creative like impulse to want to learn.
Oh, so that's a different question. Okay, so curiosity. Where does that come from? Wonderment. Where does that come from? These are questions that I have because real talk, like, I'm very concerned that this generation of kids, because they're so overwhelmed with stimuli, they're never bored. They can just go and find anything anytime. There isn't like, dog, I used to sit sometimes and just think, or look at like an ant, or watch a sunset, or look at a tree and just trip out on that.
I see that.
Why would you do that? I don't do that much anymore because I can go to Netflix on my phone. I can go to play video games right here. Like, these are all things that can distract me from
enlightenment.
Myself. Yeah. Real talk.
I feel that. Which, just by the way, it really strongly reminds me of...
Oh, the somas?
Yes.
You just drop a soma and just like, no, don't worry about it anymore.
Exactly. Brave New World. Aldous Huxley was talking about this in the early 1900s, where basically...
Shout out to Aldous.
Yeah. Even though he's long gone, like his ideas remain. And that's why I love literature so much, because it's taught me to try to be a better man, right? And I'm still working on it, guys. Like, I have my issues, and this is why I have this show, to let the younger generation know that I made the same mistakes that you're currently making, and I want you to be able to watch this show, learn from us, and say, damn, like J-Flo went through it.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
I can have an advantage.
Yeah.
This is, like SGN has said in the past, this is for the underdogs.
Yeah.
This is for people who are struggling. This is for people that need help. And I hope that you're listening, and I hope that you can take something home.
Yeah, that's good.
What is one thing you wish you would have known before you entered Cal State Long Beach at the age of?
I got into Cal State Long Beach at 21.
Perfect.
Yeah. I wish I got to know, or I wish I had more confidence around taking chances. I think something that, in reflecting on my life, is I took the safe route a lot in life. And I did that because I knew how precarious existence could be. Meaning, my mom and I lived on this thin line between survival and loss of everything, right? So the thing, you know when my mom was the happiest? Was when I got a job that gave me health insurance.
Teaching?
No, it was a job. I didn't teach. I didn't start out teaching. I was working in the private sector.
Okay.
And why is that so important? Because my mom got sick and she could never take a day off. And she knew that if she missed a day of work, she might not be able to make rent. So my dream was kind of what I have now. You know, the idea that I can pay my bills without having to worry about where am I going to get the money. 50+% of the nation can't come up with $400 in an emergency. In the richest country in the history of the world. You know, so I am ambivalent about this subject because I believe if I had believed in myself more, if I had taken more risks, I wouldn't have the question in the back of my mind of what if. And I hate that question.
It's the worst question ever.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why I make a lot of mistakes, but I really want to risk it.
That's a better approach because you're gonna regret much more to think risks that you didn't take as opposed to the chances that you did.
Right. So I'd rather apologize
than ask for forgiveness.
Exactly. Exactly. What's one thing that you're mainly curious about today? Either small or big, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I mean, I stay curious.
I know.
I stay curious.
So let's try to minimize it to either like the top couple things.
Right. One of the things that I'm really struggling with is what it is that makes it so that certain people are very comfortable not knowing, whereas I am very uncomfortable not searching.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're just like, oh, I made a decision when I was 17 and I've been living that since the rest of my life. And I go, and you never thought like you might be wrong on that? And they're like, nope. And it's like, all right, I don't know how to talk to you right now because I just feel like they're really missing out on something. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand people who are different than me. Like liberal, progressive, but I spend a lot of times reading conservative thinkers, listening to conservative talk radio. Fox News doesn't really count because they're not conservative, they're just the fucking worst, right? I mean, really, they shouldn't exist. I mean, they just perpetually lie and like obfuscate and conflate things. But anyway, I spend a lot of energy trying to understand people who do things that are against their own self-interest because I don't want to be like, oh, you guys are stupid and I'm smart. That's that doesn't help anything, right?
Right. No,
there's something that
not.
they understand that I don't, and I want to understand it, even if maybe they're doing it on a subconscious level. Okay. That's why Hillbilly Elegy is a book by J.D. Vance that really interests me. What's the Matter with Kansas? That's by Thomas Frank. It's a book about like how all these people in the Midwest and the South and poor people, working class people, vote against their own economic self-interest. And I've lost friends, and I've had conversations with people that I really care about who are good people who voted for Donald Trump.
Okay.
And I can't understand what it is. I guess maybe because I'm trying to have an answer that's writ large for the group, when really it's maybe more case by case. But there's a lot of people who just go like, my dad voted this way, so I vote this way, or oh, my mom's this religion, so I'm this religion. And I think part of the reason, you were asking me earlier, is what made me curious about certain things. Maybe it's because my mom raised me Muslim. My aunt's a born-again Christian. Okay. And my mom allowed me to go to church with my aunt.
Okay.
So I would get all of these stories from this side and all of these stories from that side, and then I would be like, well, neither the two shall meet. I mean, some of this stuff conflicts. It's oil and water. Okay. So what is this? But I was really concerned about my soul, right? I was a pious little kid. I would look up at the stars and be like, am I going to go to hell for eternity? I mean, I still do that. I still trip out about that because what if I choose wrong? Right. So I think having these questions in my head constantly bouncing around made it so that I was a natural student. And because I was the only child who was told a lot of times, shut up and sit down, be quiet. I would go to parties with my mom, and my mom would be doing her thing, and I would just sit in the corner and be quiet, nice little boy, right? So I became an auditory learner to a certain extent. So lecture, if somebody's gonna lecture, I'm in.
You can sit down for 3 hours and listen to someone if they're good. They're good, obviously.
Oh yeah, I look forward to it. I do it all the time. I mean, that's my podcast. I listen to professor lectures, there's one guy who does these philosophical Harvard lectures, and he just put them online.
I love Cornel West.
Oh yeah, Cornel West is a great brother.
Such an enlightening, like soul brother that can hit you with the intellect and the heart at the same time. And I feel like he's the type of person who's like a Princeton University professor, but will sit down with someone at a bus stop who's maybe houseless and just really get down to their level
and empathize
and understand each other. And I strive. He's evolved. Yeah, I strive to be like people like him because I have dreams of making it big, right?
What does that mean?
For me, it could mean a lot of different things. Currently, I am meaning like economically speaking. Like I want to have a lot of wealth, but my reason for that is because I want to be able to share that
with who?
With people like me. And I don't mean like people that look like me, like that are Latinos or Latinx folk. What I'm talking about is like people who I know that are engaging in some sort of struggle that comes down from generations that have been passed down through all these different toxic ways of thinking that sometimes our family members had no choice but to partake in because they had zero level of education, right? As you were mentioning earlier, what was that one thing that allowed you to think about like toxic masculinity? It was the fact that you had a class at one of the best
junior colleges,
community colleges in possibly the country.
Oh, easily.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I can also sort of relate to that because when I was at East LA College, I had some of the best like English professors that were like, first of all, you're a good writer. You can use that in your life in some way or another, which made me feel really good about myself. And number two, there was a professor that would be like, can you guys even argue? Like, when you guys argue with people, do you lose every single time?
Absolutely, they do.
And then I was like, wait a minute. I want to be able to argue.
Yeah, that's real.
And to this day, like I'm really good at arguing with people. Sometimes it gets me into some really bad trouble, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm trying to find a place where I can argue respectfully and kind of give you your space, but at the same time be like, hey, I'm very assertive about what I think.
Right.
What do you think?
Because I've been thinking about it.
Exactly.
See, that's the difference. This is the thing that I think you bring to the table, and I always recognize this about you. You're a really good listener, and you're a thinker. So what that means is, first of all, I'm gonna hear what you really said when somebody's making an argument. And then I'm really gonna manipulate it in my mind so that I understand all the different permutations of it, the different angles of it. And now I'm gonna offer it back to you, this counter argument. This is the way I'm doing it, so I'm gonna project a little bit on you.
Sure, it's fine.
I have thought about this enough that I'm thinking that you must have already thought about this. So I understand it on this level. Now explain it to me on the next level. And when they can't, and when it turns out that they're still on this level, they haven't even gotten to the level that we are thinking on it out,
right.
It breaks my heart. Because I go, I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I came into the conversation expecting you to teach me something. And it turns out you have spent such little time in the arena of thought that you stopped at level 1 of the thinking. And so when I dismantle your argument, right. And you get defensive and angry, well, I'm entitled to my opinion. The fuck you're entitled to your opinion? You're entitled to defend a position that you have thought deeply about. But if you have not thought deeply about it, stay outside the ring, bro, because you're about to get excoriated here. I don't go play basketball against Kobe Bryant and be like, yo, you know what? I don't even have the right shoes or whatever, but I'm ready to go. Let's go. And I have just as many rights to take this shot as you do. No, you don't. This guy put in work every day on this idea.
True.
The idea being basketball. True. So when I'm talking to you about religion or politics or gender or any of these sort of things, and I'm asking you questions, please come correct. Right. Because if you don't, and I ask some follow-up questions that point out your ignorance on it, it's not because I'm being an asshole. It's because you shouldn't have been in this conversation, or you should have been asking questions. Because there's hella things that I don't know shit about.
Right.
And what I do is I go, hey, can you explain that to me?
Right.
Well, what about this part of it? Right. What about that part of it? But when you go, well, it's my opinion and you can't tell me shit about it. No.
That's where you've lost me.
Yeah, I don't respect that. Yeah, I can't mess with that.
You know, a lot of people tend to think that I'm arrogant.
I can't believe that anybody thinks that.
No, for real. Some people think that I'm very arrogant.
I think it's because you're good looking and they probably hold that against you. Honestly.
No, I think it's because of my like arguing skills that might appear to be sort of condescending at times.
I always get that too.
You know what I mean? So for anyone listening, if you've ever gotten that vibe from me, it's not my objective to make you feel less than. I just really want you to see my perspective for what it is.
Right.
And I'm definitely gonna challenge everything that you say.
Right.
If I disagree with it. And if your position is better than mine, I'm gonna accept it.
Oh,
I swear.
I will celebrate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to live with the idea of something that turns out to be wrong. So when somebody, that's why I don't like the idea of debate or an argument.
It's about beating you,
it's
squashing you. You have to believe in what I believe in.
Yeah, or I win or you lose. Well, if it's an I win, you lose situation, then the ego gets involved. And when the ego gets involved, then we don't learn. We're not trying to get to a higher understanding. See, I think of it as like, what is it, the dialectical, right? So I give this way and you go, no, here's this part, oh, this part, right? So when somebody's just like not ready for that, it's really disappointing, obviously, but I'm not coming from a bad place. If you prove me wrong, I will thank you. I will go home and be like, man, I'm so glad I had that conversation with J Flo because he really pointed some things out to me. And I can point out a time when that happens. It sticks in my mind. One time I was making an argument to a lot of our teachers here about what I would really like is for our kids to do some more community-based things around cleaning up the lunch shelter.
Okay.
Because I think it's really disrespectful. That I want to humanize the fact that we have a staff that cleans up after our kids, and our kids don't humanize them. They think somebody else has to do it.
Right.
And so I said I wanted to put up a picture and a little story behind who our custodians are, whether they have kids or not, what's their, et cetera, et cetera. And so that the kids would feel like, well, number one, I shouldn't do that to Bob or whoever it is. And number two, this is my school, this is my community.
Right. Right.
I shouldn't just leave it behind, right?
Right.
So Miss Amesqua, shout out to Miss Amesqua, she was like, don't you think that that might be the case because a lot of the kids don't feel like they own anything in this community, and because they don't own anything in this community, they don't maybe have the power to feel like it's theirs, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a rejection of it, and that manifests itself in sort of like an impotent power display of like, fuck it, I'm just leave this behind.
Sure.
And maybe I'm misrepresenting exactly what you said, Miss Mesco, but that was the takeaway that I had. And I just thought like, tip my cap to you. That was a good point. I didn't include that in my thinking as to what I wanted the kids to accomplish, but by hearing that perspective, it gave me context around certain ideas, and I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. That was
for sure.
That was to my betterment.
For sure. And so, as valid as that argument may be, we should still aim to inspire our kids to say, you know what? Even if I don't own anything, I should take ownership.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Ooh, that was nice.
And that's really what I'm trying to be on now.
Yeah.
As a descendant of generations of colonized people, of displaced people.
Right.
I think it's my time, honestly speaking, to be that first generation that says, I'm going to do something with my life that's gonna allow that to trickle down to my community.
Right.
Like for real.
For real.
You know what I mean? And so that's something that I aspire to. And so let's take ownership of ourselves first, and then we'll move on from there. Rami, I know that you absolutely love your pets.
Yeah.
What? I'm honestly, like, I also own a pet. His name is Skylar. He's really
Shout
cool.
out to Skylar. I know you're watching out there, Skylar. Like, can't wait for you to go home. He's like, stop filming, come home and hug me.
What have your pets done for your emotional well-being?
That's a good. Dang. I'm a really social animal, and dogs are magic. Yeah. They're brilliant. You know, cats. Fine. I'm glad you exist. I really do. I'm glad that I think they're playful and stuff. But cats, one, they're not domesticated. Generally speaking, they're not. They say the two signals of domestication are curly hair and floppy ears. Cats could eat you, and a lot of times they do eat you when you die. They just lick your face off. So nothing. You know, I shouldn't even said it like as if it's either or.
Fine.
The dogs are social animals. I'm highly social. I'm gregarious as hell, right? So when I come home and I get enthusiasm, I'm bringing that enthusiasm almost every day. I open the bedroom door and then I start running through the halls and around my kitchen counter, you know, the island. And Sammy's chasing me and Lulu's chasing me.
Really?
And it's joyous. And it's just me and these two dogs. And I don't even say I own them. I say I'm their guardian.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's like the idea is.
I think you're dispossessed. I think you're like separating yourself again from the idea of like patriarchal, like ownership.
Right.
I own my kids.
Yeah.
I own my home. I own my wife.
Right.
Everything is a possession.
Right.
Under that sort of ideology.
And here's why that's dangerous. Because if you possess it, you could lose it. And so then you become insecure about losing it, and you become like more protective of it, and you become smaller. Right? Instead of expanding out and saying we're open, this whole world is a freaking experience.
It seems like the opposite of freedom in a sense.
Exactly. Ownership is actually enslavement, because what you worry about once you own something is what if I lose it? See, that was one of the cool things that I read in Fight Club, which I try to get the kids to read Fight Club, even though it's really advanced on a lot of levels. Okay. But the stuff that you own ends up owning you was a central premise of the story.
Oh, that's
like think about when you get those fresh kicks.
Nuts.
And you're like, oh my God, my shoes are gorgeous. And then somebody scuffs them and you're ready to fight. Or you're going down the stairs and now your day is miserable. Bruh, those are some shoes. They should be bringing you joy. And if you are stressed out about, oh, I can't crease them. What if I've been this way? Then that means they own you. You don't own them.
Yo, that exactly spoke to me. And this one time I was wearing some fresh Adidas. Yeah. Super fresh. And I go downstairs and Marin is down there, and he used to give me hugs. He used to give me hugs all the time. And this one time, he stepped on my fresh suede shoes, and I swear I was pissed off in that moment. And then later on, in retrospect, I was like,
I valued the shoes over the affection from a mentor.
Exactly.
Come on, man.
Exactly. And I feel
and you lost
so
that
bad
joy.
about it. Yes.
You lost the joy in that connection in that moment because you were worried about something that a Chinese kid built for $1.25 that you paid $100 for, that sometimes kids shoot each other and kill each other for. Yeah. It's a really sick society that we live in. Yeah. We're valuing the wrong things.
And I'm a part of that. And
we all are.
I share that because I know how significant it has. Material positions have been in my life.
Yes. Why? Well, why are they important? Because they're not virtue signal. It's a signal to the world that, look, I have value based on the things that I have, instead of I have value based on the thing that I am.
Perfect. You know, perfectly stated. And honestly, I try to share that as much as possible. That, yeah, sure, like, looks attract people,
no doubt.
But at the end of the day, like, what keeps you?
No doubt, you know, looks attract people. You know,
what's gonna keep you? It's like what you can share mentally, like emotionally, spiritually. Those are the things that are gonna make me want to say, like, you are someone who I want to cherish and carry, and not necessarily carry, but walk alongside with.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say that. Jesus carries me on the beach. I was just like, dang, Jesus, you've been walking for a long time.
What Jesus?
Black Jesus?
Maybe. Okay.
Any type of Jesus. But just like I can put a button on the dog thing.
Sure. Let's do it.
So for me, I think there's a evolved love is when you can love something that doesn't remind you of you. And I know I was talking about the personality things, but like, of course you love your child. That's supposed to happen, right? But if you can love a bird that gives you nothing besides the fact that you know it exists, or an animal that it doesn't have your lineage, it doesn't have, you can just love on that level. That's an evolved love, because it's a sentient being and it feels. And if you're concerned about the feelings of something that can't communicate to you, can't argue for it, can't have retribution against you, then you're just loving for love. And the best thing about, you know, when we say like, I love you, I think a better way to say that, and I think I heard this somewhere, is you allow me to be love. So when I'm around you and you allow me to be love, dang, that's beautiful. When I come home and I see those two dogs and I'm the light of their life, and laying on my chest for Lulu is the greatest joy for her and it's the greatest joy for me, they're allowing me to be love.
I can feel that.
It's such a beautiful thing, man.
I can feel that, and just thinking about it is like,
Lulu Sammy, shout out.
It's very inspiring, bro. It's very inspiring. It's definitely moving. Self-care.
Self-care.
Why is self-care important? It doesn't matter what type of line of work you're doing, really honestly. Like, you could be in any sector of society. I strongly believe that taking care of your well-being is highly important. Why would you say that it's important?
I think Tupac said it best. We have one life to live. It's so hard to be positive when people shooting at your crib. No, that's not the right line. Well, the thing is we do have one life to live.
YOLO?
As far as I know. So YOLO can be misconstrued as like, fuck it, let's just do the craziest thing ever. It's like, no, let's like, how do I live my best life? And living my best life means when I'm 60, I'm okay. When I'm 70, I'm okay. When I'm 80, I'm okay. So self-care is financial. I want to make sure that I'm not dependent upon a government that might create someone like Donald Trump who doesn't care about any of us. I don't want to be dependent upon that. Self-care is, I want to make sure that I feel good in my body while I'm living in it. I don't want to be, and everything hurts. So you got to take care of your body a little bit. Self-care is, what are you putting into your body? Self-care is, hold on. Stress is a motherfucker. It kills, it gets people sick. I saw it in my mom's life. She developed a thyroid. She lost all types of weight. She had to be rushed to the hospital. They had to put her, because that woman is a gangster. She worked 6 days a week for decades in a country where people were like, you're beneath me, you work for me, pick up my dirty underwear, clean up my whatever, and she couldn't take a day off, she couldn't take vacations. So for me, I learned at a young age that the meaningful existence is a balanced one. If I'm giving too much to my employment, then I'm not giving enough to my partner, Megan Goulding, the love of my life, LOML. If I'm giving too much to her, then I'm not getting enough to my friends, because those people are meaningful to me too. And if I'm giving up too much to everybody and I'm not taking care of me, then there's going to eventually be not enough of me to go around to begin with. So having that sort of balance, that self-care is essential to doing that. And that might mean a massage, that might mean a vacation, that might mean reading a book, that might mean meditating, that might mean going for a walk with my dog, that might mean eating really healthy. It manifests itself in a multitude of ways.
Beautiful. And it's, what you just said is going to allow me to transition excellently into the next question, which is like, what is your favorite book or books?
I really did like this one, but I didn't like it as much as 1984. I really like Albert Camus' The Stranger, but not as much as like, it depends though. So like, let's say if I'm just doing something for pulpy reads, like for fun, on the beach. I read a book called The Last Good Kiss. That was an awesome read.
Okay, I imagine it's like a love?
No, it's a detective story. Right, so he's a detective and he's come out of the Vietnam War. And what did I think the Vietnam War, where you can point to things at like the heart of when America kind of lost its way. I mean, assuming the fact that we know that there is structural racism that built this nation.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the idea
slavery.
Yes.
Obviously.
The idea that we were connected as a whole in a country that started to fray, if not altogether be destroyed, in the 1960s and 70s, right? So he is a person coming out of that time period. So he's disenchanted, disillusioned, but he's really good at what he does. And then you follow him on the story and you're just like, every page is exciting. And then the phrasing that the author uses is just really, really great. It's just highly well written. Then there's books like, that inform me on my political tip. So things like, we said earlier, Hillbilly Elegy that I read over Christmas break.
Okay.
That's a lot of fun for me. 1984 is like my dystopian, Orwellian world that like freaks me out, and that was during a certain time period of my life. Things that have really informed my thinking are things like Iron John, Men and Masculinity. That was a book about like what it means to be a manhood. Which one?
Is that by Bell Hooks? That book? Men and Masculinity?
I don't think so.
Okay, never mind.
I mean, I read that one in college. Fight Club was really, really important to me during certain time periods of my life.
It's a very intense like criticism of capitalism, isn't it?
Capitalism, femininity, masculinity, like all of those sort of things under an umbrella. And I wrote some dope ass essays about them, you know? And this is why I like writing so much, because writing is clear thought.
Because it allows you to revise.
Yes, and you get to be like, wait, and sometimes have you ever done this where you're typing, and you're like, oh damn, I didn't even know I thought that. That was there, that was latent.
I guess,
and it like you got a chance to actually explore that idea.
Right.
You know, those dark nights, lonely, playing some music and you're just writing.
Or like sometimes like I used to write a lot more into my journal, especially when I lived in Chicago back in 2015.
Chi-town.
And I would basically use the train to get everywhere.
Oh, how nice.
I would either read a book or I would write. And when I look at some of those notes today, I'm just like, you wrote that.
That's nice.
And it's not that I think I'm an impressive writer. It's just that.
But it's okay if you do.
The emotion that I was feeling at the time period through that writing, at the moment I was able to let it go. And number two, as I look at it in the future, I'm just like, wow, like you were going through these periods of emotional distress or emotional happiness, and it's almost like a way to go back in time and re-experience something as beautiful as what you were feeling in the past.
Whatever it might have been, good, bad, or other.
Exactly.
Yeah, because when you feel something, that means you're alive. The worst case scenario is you feel nothing, that you're numb, that you just go through this world like a zombie. But even
worst case scenario.
Yeah, I tell my students, you know, when you're heartbroken, that's a gorgeous feeling. That creates connection with every other person who's ever been heartbroken. You're not alone there. You can now lament and commiserate with scores of people, right? And you felt something deeply. What's the point of going through this universe if you just want everything to be like bland? Bro, feel it deeply. Dive into that pain. Cry your eyes out and come out of it reborn knowing that like that's an experience that I've had, that I've grown from, that has tested me. That's a cool thing. I've never had my heart broken by a girl. The only time I've had my heart broken is when Trump won the election. I swear to God, that broke my heart.
So you were mentioning how, you know, the last time your heart was broken was when Donald Trump was elected as the president of the United States, which to me was not entirely shocking, being that I strongly have noticed that democracy as a wholesome institution in this country has been deteriorating for decades.
You're right.
And I remember watching
Shout out to the Republicans.
I remember watching this really interesting movie when I was younger, like in high school, and I think it was called Idiocracy.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Jack Shepard.
There's this president that I think his name was Camacho, right? And this, like, he was just so ridiculously dumb, but so was the entire population. And so my biggest fear is that people, as we begin to, I don't want to say become dumber, but we start thinking less. It's so much easier for us to be manipulated.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if we already elected Donald Trump, and I'm saying we because I am American, even if I'm seen as hyphenated by half of America, I'm part of the collective. And I'm afraid, bro. I'm afraid that we're not gonna be able to recover, because we're already so deep into this system.
Right.
And so I guess I want to ask you, like, what is your opinion regarding this political structure that basically has
I don't know if you have enough tape for all of my opinions, because this is something that I give an unhealthy portion of my thought to, maybe. You know, that's arguable, because I think about it when I wake up. Megan sometimes points me out, she's like, I've never known anybody who wakes up already deep in thought about politics or government or human nature or these sort of things, and I go to sleep thinking about it, you know? So I'll try to limit my opinions to the things that are most pertinent, but my instincts are to be optimistic, right? To be tomorrow is going to be better. That's why I'm a progressive. When I say the word progressive, I mean, I think tomorrow can be better today because we're going to learn the lessons of today and yesterday to make sure that tomorrow's better today. And if tomorrow sucks, well, we'll learn those lessons and make the next day better, and then the next day better. That's the idea of progressivism. It's like, are we going to take the risk to try to make a better tomorrow? And conservatism is saying, I stand on the shoulders of giants, don't have too much arrogance. How dare you think that you can make a better tomorrow? The way people did it for thousands of years had to have worked for some level, so why don't we make sure that we're staying true to our traditions? And I go, okay, I can have space for that and respect for that. What I can't have space and respect for is republicanism. Republicans have lost their way. And this is not my opinion based off of like Facebook posts and things like that. This is study after study has shown that the continuum, the political continuum of America has shifted, not from the center left, but from the center right. And because of that, now everything that used to be, I mean, think about what the Democrats are asking for. They want universal health care. Why? Because people are dying. Before ACA, 87% of all personal bankruptcies were due to what? Due to people not being able to pay their medical bills. That's not healthy. In the richest country of the world, you allow for that to happen? Something is wrong there. People should. My mom lived on the razor's edge of knowing that if she ever got so sick that she couldn't work, it was a wrap for us. We were immigrants. It took me 18 years to get my citizenship. We would not have been able to get any of the sort of benefits that we would have needed to survive. My mom tried to send me back to Lebanon. The personal is political. She said, I need you to go back home so I can work, live in nanny, and I don't want you to see the way I'm going to have to exist for us to make it. And I was like 8 years old, 9 years old, and I was like, Mom, no, we're partners. You can't send me away. I got to be here with you. So that's to say that personal is political. Now, again, I'm an optimist. I always think that there's a chance that tomorrow's going to be better than today. Trump winning, and then me trying to figure out what he's doing in the courts to delegitimize them, what he's doing in terms of the fourth estate, our journalism, right? The idea that what's real and what's true is not real or true, just trust me, what I say. This is all the shit that we read in 1984. This is all the shit that we read in all of those dystopian future, children of men sort of books. And I was like, how do we not know this? And then the things that he was trying to break up, NATO. You don't know what that is, kids. What is the Marshall? Like, there's all this stuff that people who voted on things having no knowledge. And then when I would try to speak to them about it, they'd say, again, I'm entitled to my own opinion. You can't tell me nothing. And I was like, but I have to. It's a civic duty in a democracy for us to engage with each other.
Absolutely.
Civic duty.
100%.
I have to question you. You have to question me. That's what it means to be a part of a voting bloc, because we are the thing that makes sure that the government works. So I have a responsibility to tell my friends, what you're doing is heinous. You can't do that. And then they don't want to hear that. And maybe I could have packaged it better. Maybe I could have communicated better. But they could have also been more curious. And they could have also been like, well, what is he really trying to create? And now what I look at, and it took me until the last, and this is real talk, until the last 4 or 5 months before I could start thinking positively again. Because I thought it was a fait accompli. Meaning, when Kavanaugh gets into the Supreme Court, he's going to have that 5-4 advantage. All of the crimes that he committed to get into the White House, all the colluding, all of the different conspiracies, all the emoluments clauses that he's manipulated. And it's only possible because the Republican Party has lost its spine and its mind. They don't stand up for things that they believe in, that they talk about behind closed doors, and they don't stand up for the things that they know are going to disintegrate our democracy, something that was 242 years in the making. I mean, people can say whatever they want about America, but one thing that America did is it created an ideal and a rule of law that said, it's not about what your name is, it's about what the law says. And there's something great about that, because we came from aristocracies and you know, those sort of systems were like, well, no, he's a duke, he's a blah, 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 blah. And of course, it wasn't a perfect system, but it was the idea of progressivism. Is the art of history is long and bends towards justice. Shout out Martin Luther King. But we got to do the bending. So when I look at all of the things that are happening under the Trump administration, happening under the Republican leadership, on what's happening in our country in terms of being no longer interconnected. There's a great book called Bowling Alone about how there used to be people who were more involved in the PTA, more involved in like local bowling crews, all these sort of things. We created a connection around people. Now what we have is cleavages. I go home and I have an echo chamber of news that's being communicated to me. You have your own news being communicated to you. And we all live in our own bubble. So then when somebody says something that you don't understand, you go, I never even heard this opinion. You must be the most radical mother out there, right? And then I'm thinking like, where will that take us? Let's take that to its logical endpoint. This is where argumentation works, right? You say A plus B equals C. Well, let's see what C is. C is a potential for civil war because he said a couple things. One, if I lose, I won't think it's legit and I won't give it up. This was before the election, right? That should have disqualified him right there. Because it shows he was more important. It was more important for him to aggrandize himself than to serve the nation. He wanted this nation to serve him. On top of it now, there's a lot of scuttlebutt that should he lose in 2020, he won't leave peacefully because he's already implanted into his supporters' mind 3 million fake voters in California by illegal immigrants. We've done a study, not true. In fact, the only time we see any sort of voting irregularities done by Republicans when they take away the vote of minorities who tend to vote for Democrats. They don't believe in democracy. And we live in the oldest democracy that's ever existed other than Athens, but that was like a different because it's direct democracy. Anyway, so when I look at that and I go, the future is dark. And I was in a dark place for about 1.5 years, like really dark place. Like couldn't look at people the same way, couldn't talk to people the same way, couldn't love people the same way because they broke my heart. I never thought that people that I loved and loved me and showed kindness to my wife and showed kindness to me and all these sort of things could do something as ignorant and hateful as voting for someone who is as ignorant and hateful as Trump. Like what dispersions could I hurl at the man that he hasn't heard already? He's the worst among us. And 61 million people said, yeah, that's what I want. Why? Because they were manipulated, because they had some hate in their heart, because they were told that Hillary Clinton had an underground pedophilia ring in a Shakey's basement that didn't even have a basement.
Right.
So that means people used to go to Walter Cronkite and get their news and say, oh, we all got our news from the same place, so we can't deny it. And now we fractionalize information to the point that everybody can, it's called Google bias or confirmation bias. Whatever you want to believe, you can QAnon it, you can find it, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, then this is some information. So how am I supposed to project? And this is a big reason why I didn't want to have a kid for a long time. We got climate change, which is a real thing, bro. It's affecting people's lives all over the place. And Republicans don't want to believe it exists. And now all of us are saying, well, Ozzy, you shouldn't call them out because that's just going to make them retreat more into their spaces and not want to engage more. But at the same time, these are adults who say science is something you can choose to believe or not believe in. 97% of scientists say it is, and the other 3% don't. Well, who are those other 3%? They're paid by ExxonMobil, by any of the, carbon burning companies out there. We are at a bottleneck moment in our lives. We're going to figure out where we're going to be 20, 30 years from now with AI, with all the jobs that are going to be lost to automation.
Yes.
How are we going to take care of it? That's why I really like this one cat, Andrew Yang. He's running for president in 2020. He's talking about the future. And conservatives right now and politics in general are still having 20th century fights when we should be worried about the 22nd century.
For sure.
So part of me is like just really conflicted around the fact that we might be in this position of hopelessness.
Okay.
Projecting that.
All right.
My only hope is that he's been so bad, like the pendulum swings back to the other extreme, and that other extreme is codifying democratic norms. That means making sure that presidents can't make money off of the presidency, like he's doing right now, the Emoluments Clause. That's making sure, well, he might go to, hopefully, get trouble. So if he loses in 2020 and he doesn't want to leave office because he knows he might be indicted and go to jail, then he will just, you watch Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Littlefinger?
Yes.
Remember when they said that Littlefinger would burn down the castle, he'd burn down the city in order to be king of the ashes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trump will burn down the world if it means he gets to be king of the ashes.
Here's what I'm wondering. Is this reversible? we mentioned how there's a significant portion of our country that significantly voted for an ignorant individual who had virtually no experience in the world of politics. He was a businessman, and even at that,
he's a shyster. He's a criminal. He's a mafia head.
You know what I mean?
Dude, he's a crook.
So, can we reverse this in a short span of time? And by that I mean the next 4-8 years. Or will it merely continue to snowball into an even worse outcome? As we've already noticed, the rise of Nazis.
Good people on both sides, bro. Good people on both sides.
Yeah.
Charlottesville.
Right.
When he said that, so we had that, people were walking around saying Jews will not replace us, which, by the way, you know what that means when they're talking about Jews will not replace us? They don't mean that Jews are going to populate the earth. They think, from the point of view, I told you I spent a lot of time trying to understand their perspective. Their thinking is multiculturalism is a Jewish plot against white ethno-nationalism. You see what I'm saying? So the idea of, oh yeah, Chinese food, great. Oh, Mexicans, oh, wonderful. Oh, Arabs, let's bring the whole world in together because we want to be cosmopolitan. And these ethno-nationalists are like, no, white for the white. America for the white Protestant.
Blood and soil.
That's the right term. They say blood and soil. And I think that is what got us into World War II. You dumb motherfuckers. That's what killed all these people. 60 million people died in World War II so that we can fight the same fights we fought back then. This is what breaks my heart, bro. I thought we evolved beyond this. We're still doing the same shit. So my hope is people really pushing back hard and media doing a better job of actually contextualizing the story and framing it properly. But my worry is he has done so many crazy things that they've just become normalized. They just, like, I remember my wife and I were talking, and at this point I was completely defeated. And she was like, no, things are changing. All the babies in the cages that are being separated from their mothers, who they would tell stories like, give us your baby for a little bit, we're just gonna take it for a bath and we're gonna bring her right back, and never brought back. Now it's worse than ever. And we don't even hear that story. She thought that was gonna be the turning point. The tide was gonna go the other way. That's just a part of our everyday, and now people justify it. Because why? Because if it exists, then it must exist for a reason. And if it exists for a reason, then we can just move past it. You see what I'm saying? And then, so that part of me goes, no, I don't think we're gonna ever get back to it. But the other part of me, the part of me that's coming back, the part of me that's hopeful again, the part of me that has that light, and of all the people who were kind to me my whole life, that made me believe that, you know, the decency of humanity and the intelligence of people like the people who wrote a lot of our Constitution and amended it and things like that, says, yeah, we have answers for all of these. Do we have the will?
Is another question. I want to believe that we do. As pessimistic as I am about bureaucracy, I'm highly optimistic about community, myself, my family, my inner circle. But because I have control over that, well, at least influence over my circle, control over myself.
Okay.
Right. Constitution.
I could push back against the idea that you have control over yourself too.
Well,
we could do that. That's
maybe another conversation.
Yeah, another conversation.
So our Constitution was obviously like influenced by a variety of different philosophers,
right?
Which
thinkers.
Makes me want to ask you, who is your favorite philosopher?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that.
Or is there like a philosophy that you personally ascribe to?
This is gonna explain to you why I don't like the identity of chance versus the identity of choice. So my identity of chance argument, this is when I argue against my friends on the left. Because my friends on the left are very much identity focused, right? Well, why? It makes sense to me. I can understand it. Because they've been oppressed and repressed and suppressed for so long that you do what a lot of groups do, which is recede into your bubble because that's safe.
Right.
But then there's a power in back by saying it, and that there goes my people, our people. Well, what does that do? It creates a line where there are people within your circle and people outside of your circle. I don't like that. That's not an evolved way of thinking. Because at the end of the day, when aliens come and attack us or whatever, maybe they won't attack us, but I'm just using that as an example. They're not gonna look at the fact that your pigment is different than my pigment versus your hair is, like, that is small. That's the identity of chance. The chance of the fact that my parents boned in Lebanon and I was born there. So I'm supposed to take pride in the fact that I'm Lebanese? It just so happened, right? That's an accident.
Right.
The chance that I'm cisgender, straight, super handsome, like, those are things that I had no control over. In fact, I'm trying to go the other way, right? Like, why am I going to create an identity out of things that I didn't choose? Here's what I did choose, as much as we can choose anything.
Okay.
My intellect, my curiosity, the way I treat people, my sense of humor, the way I mean, those are things that I choose. Judge me on those things, right? Content of my character as opposed to the color of my skin, or the way I want to express my love to people, right? So, the dopest idea that I've ever come across and can never have anybody counter is called Rawlsian. John Rawls' Veil of Ignorance. Peep the game. He said, if you didn't know who you were going to be in a society, what kind of society would you create? If you didn't know if you were going to be handicapped or handy-capable, if you didn't know if you were going to be tall or short, if you didn't know if you were going to be black or white, if you didn't know if you were going to be straight or gay, if you didn't know if you were going to be transgender or cisgender, if you didn't know if you were going to be black, whatever, if you didn't know who you were going to be in that society, what kind of society would you create? Or rich or poor? You would create an egalitarian society that would give everybody the same sort of platform to grow from.
That's exactly what I thought when you asked me what type of society would I create.
Yeah.
One in which everyone is treated with love, respect, dignity, and there isn't immensely, just wildly gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Right. Because that's a disconnected society.
Exactly.
You don't have anything in common with me if you're living your life on your second yacht and I'm trying to find out how to, like, come up with some extra food so that I can feed, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what connection do we have there? I'm barely trying to survive and you're on this whole other self-realization tip. We should all be on some self-realization tip. We should, that's the level that we should guarantee for everybody.
Maslow's
to say, like,
hierarchy,
real talk.
Everyone's needs should be met. That way everyone reaches the pinnacle, which is self-actualization.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, guys, I imagine that, Ramadan, you are as privileged, not necessarily as privileged as me, but I'm privileged enough, guys, to be sitting here in front of you using all this technology to be able to try to enrich your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Real talk.
Because I feel like I've reached the moment in my life where I'm beginning to self-actualize, which means that I'm getting all these basic necessities met. And although they were not always met, they are now.
Right.
And so I'm in a position where I'm allowed to nurture others around me. Even though at one point, as I described myself as a seed, I was struggling to blossom. I was struggling to crack the soil. Right. But like Tupac says,
now you flower, brother.
Exactly. Right. Like even roses can grow from concrete. Right. And I strongly relate to that. I read that poem when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't even know like Tupac was a poet. That
was my guy. I had that book.
Saw that book, and then I was like, I read it, and it was like one of the first books, literally in high school, that I read out of pleasure.
Yes.
And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, like this is who I can be. Because I knew I hadn't fully blossomed into who I could be. And then little by little, I went to college, I went to Iowa. It was crazy, man.
Experiences.
Oh my God, those experiences. I hope to share those with you guys one day.
I know some of them.
Right. I went to Chicago, and when I was in Chicago, I was at a very important transitional point where I was like, I'm peaking, I'm like breaking through, but I wasn't being nurtured enough. To be nurtured is such an important thing. And when I was at a point in my life where I was really trying to become who I wasn't being nurtured properly while I was living in Chicago. So I decided to come back home. Even though I could have possibly like gotten a job after my internship as a labor organizer of a type, there was something that was in my gut steering and telling me, this ain't it. This ain't it. And I would have conversations with my dad, and my dad would be like, you should definitely, like, because I told him that I wanted to be a teacher or that I wanted to be a labor organizer, and he was kind of like, he knew that being a teacher would be financially a little better. Oh yeah. So from that perspective, he wanted me to be as set as possible. Even though teachers don't make as much money as we would like to, it's very decent. It's a very decent living, and it provides you things that allow you to reach your self-actualization by allowing you to at least complete or your basic necessities in life. And so, I came back, and being back home, it really allowed me to hang out with people that loved me. Right. I surrounded myself with like SGN, Dr. Marin, you, people that I didn't have to try to be loved by. And it was just like so impressive, because up to that point, when I came back to LA, Huntington Park, I felt like I always had to try to like prove to people that I was like smart, or like that I was like in the fight, like I always wanted to prove people that I was with it. And I always felt like I had to perform. I was this machine of performance, and it was like just killing me at the end of the day. But when I came here, when I started being myself, like I just gravitated towards a circle of people that were just like, dude, like you're like us, and we want to support you and love you and motivate you. And honestly, it was just such a profound, like beautiful moment to end up where I ended up.
I'm glad you ended up there.
Okay,
that's far.
So there is a very important segment of my show, which is to provide our audience with a gem, a principle, something that they can take today after listening to this magnificent show.
Magnificent.
Use in their life,
right,
as a tool or anything else,
right,
that can make their lives better. What would you like to share with our audience today?
There's a panoply of things that I'd like to communicate, but I guess if I had to reduce it down to its essence, it's my understanding, as far as I know, is we only exist once. And if that's the case, I do this sort of exercise with my students where I go, where are we? And they say, we're in our classroom. It's boring, mister, I hate you. And I go, okay, let's go back a little deeper. And I go, where's our classroom? They're like, at this school, and the school is BS, and I hate it. And I go, where's that? And they're like, it's in California. Where's California? It's United States. Where's the United States? It's on Earth. And what is Earth? It's a ball of rock that is orbiting in space around a ball of fire. Real talk, it's supposed to blow your mind. That's a crazy idea that right now we're sitting in a classroom talking about all the different things we're saying, but our planet is hurling through an ever-expanding universe, orbiting a ball of fire. So what does that suggest? Let's go to Rick and Morty. In one of the episodes where he's dating Unity, there's a song that comes out of it, and it says, Morty says to his sister, it's actually just in the song, where he goes, nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. So if I have that running in my head, what does that mean to me? What that means is we have a choice to make. Are we gonna stay inside of ourselves in the negative sense and lose sight of the magnificence of our world around us? The fact that a tree can start from something as small as a seed and grow into something as big as a redwood? The fact that our oceans pull back and forth due to the tides of the moon, the tides of our ocean are due to the moon, and that allows us to understand the wonderment of this universe? Like, invest in the idea that your life is meaningful, because your life is a miracle. Out of all the people that's ever existed, no one is you but you. So take your time to recognize that you're a miracle, to love yourself as such, and explore this world and your place in it, and give as much as you can so that your life is as meaningful as it can be, because we may not get another run of this. And I would hate, it would break my heart for people that I care about, for people in general, which is everybody. I care for everybody, bro, to have lived a life that wasn't worth living. So I hope you see yourself as worthy of the investment, because I think you are. I know you are. And I hope you do too. You got this one run. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Ramadan, for coming to the show, sharing wisdom, sharing knowledge, sharing power with our audience. I want you guys to use this. As he said, you're special. He loves you.
I do. I love you. Especially you.
I definitely.
Jack. Yeah, you, buddy. You're the one.
I definitely love you. And more importantly, bro, I love you.
I love you, man. Real talk.
Thank you so much. Hey, I can't wait to see you back on the show.
Yes.
In the near
anytime.
future. And
let's have a panel conversation.
I had a blast.
Yeah.
And onward, everybody. I will see you guys next time. Like, subscribe, comment.
Real talk.
Hey, but more importantly, share this with the world. I have other episodes with a lot of great information. Know. I mean, just look at this beautiful
people
face.
Can see this. People
look at this swagger.
You know what I'm saying? All the way through.
You can follow me on Instagram at Drippy
Faucet
_ JFlow. And that's about it, guys. I'll see you guys next time.
All right.